You're listening to the Jefferson Exchange. Thanks for joining us. The JX starts today with the debrief, where JPR reporters discuss the stories they've been covering this week, including an attempt to recall 2 Josephine County commissioners, controversy over a volunteer recovery diver, and what a school cell phone ban has to do with lunch, and more. I'm Maria Carter, JPR's news director.
I'm Emma J. Nelson, JPR's intern for the summer.
I'm Roma Battaglia, Science, Environment, and Politics reporter.
I'm Justin Higginbottom, Public Health and Safety reporter.
And I'm Jane Vaughn, Housing, Homelessness, and Education reporter.
Emma J., you covered the recall efforts against 2 Josephine County commissioners this week. Tell us what's going on there.
Yeah, members of the Political Action Committee Restore Josephine County, or Restore JOCO, filed petitions to recall Commissioners Chris Barnett and Andreas Bleck this week. The charge is being led by Jim Goodwin. You may recognize his name, Maria. He was the Director of Juvenile Justice in Josephine County from 2012 until he resigned in April of this year, and he's been pretty active at Board of Commissioners meetings. Anyway, Goodwin says that some of Barnett and Bleck's actions recently have violated the county charter.
And how are they saying these things violated the county charter?
Well, for a couple of reasons. The biggest overlap between the 2 petitions to recall actually happened back in March, and Goodwin said that's when all of this kind of started. In March, Barnett and Commissioner Ron Smith actually voted to give Bleck sole authority to make organizational, administrative, and personnel decisions for 90 days. This meant that he could restructure the county government, including laying off staff, without board oversight.
But you said Commissioner Ron Smith also voted to give Bleck power for these changes. Why isn't he part of this recall?
I had the same question for Goodwin. He said that it came down to how time-intensive it is to get petition signatures to recall one official, let alone 2. So instead of going for all 3 at once, Goodwin said that the group picked, quote, the worst 2 of the 3. The Political Action Committee's Facebook page has addressed Smith, too. It's posting that they don't excuse his actions, but they need to focus on Barnett and Bleck right now.
Another issue the county's been debating is the Grants Pass library lease. Are the 2 related at all?
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. They very much are. So the petition against Barnett lists his January vote to terminate the lease as one of the reasons he should be recalled. The library district and the county came close to reaching a new agreement last week, but Bleck actually reintroduced the termination clause that the 2 parties had negotiated to remove from the lease, so now they're back to the negotiation table. The library district has proposed a new termination clause that mirrors the one that the county has with the YMCA, but the library also isn't mentioned in the petition to recall Bleck, despite him being the one to reintroduce this termination clause.
So what comes next in all this?
Well, Restore JOCO would need to get at least 6,445 signatures on each of the 2 petitions to call for a special recall election. The deadline to get those signatures isn't until November 24th, so just before Thanksgiving. And the commissioners and Restore JOCO each now need to convince county residents to join their side. So there's a little bit of a battle happening.
Okay, well, thank you, Emma J. Justin, you had a very different story this week. You had a feature on a volunteer recovery diver that's been working in our region. This guy sounds really interesting. What's his story?
Yeah, I had a profile on Juan Heredia. So he works in real estate in Stockton, but in his free time, he's a recovery diver, which means when there's an accident with deaths in a lake or river, he helps recover those bodies. And I think I first heard his name when he recovered a 9-month-old baby, actually, from the Trinity River. The parents' car had driven off the road. It ended up in the river, and search and rescue couldn't find the baby for days. I was following it with local press, and that's when Heredia heard about the search. He showed up, and within hours, he had found the infant's body.
He was just a beautiful baby in my arms, and I didn't want to let it go until somebody opened their arms for the baby.
So he waited there with the infant until the parents showed up. And he was really celebrated in the community for that. But then after that, I began reading his name more and more often in recovery operations around California and Oregon. And he's been doing this work for just over a year. And in that time, he's recovered over a dozen bodies, many times after search and rescue can't find them.
Well, this seems like a thing not many people volunteer to do. How did he get into volunteering for this?
Yeah, right. Yeah, he has a kind of strange path there. So he's from Argentina originally, and he grew up freediving as a kid. He says actually when he would fish with his father, he would often jump off the boat into the water to uncatch their hook when it was caught. But he picked up an interest in diving and became an instructor eventually. It wasn't until just over a year ago, though, that he began helping families search for their loved ones. And in a short amount of time, he had recovered a number of bodies around California. And that's when his social media profile sort of blew up and he started getting tagged for missing bodies all around the country and even the world.
Wow. So you report, though, that he's been turned away from some scenes, some rivers. Why is that? Why would anyone turn this guy away?
Yeah, even in that case, actually, I mentioned at the Trinity River, the sheriff's office at first turned him away. So he had to wait until they basically left the scene to dive. But when this happened on the Deschutes River recently, it kind of blew up on social media because of Heredia's following. He had a much higher social media following at that time.
And then the Deschutes County Sheriff?
Yeah, it turns out. So the Deschutes County Sheriff's Office was looking for a drowning victim, and when Heredia showed up, he said they actually threatened to arrest him if he got in the water. I spoke with someone from that department, and he said these recovery scenes are pretty sensitive. They're actually crime scenes, so they don't allow just anyone off the street to enter. And they also have their own skilled team. The Deschutes County Sheriff's Department has a search and rescue team. There's also liability issues if a volunteer is injured. But anyways, the sheriff's office Facebook page got like over 1,000 comments telling the department to let Heredia dive after Heredia posted about this interaction with them.
So what happened? Did he dive?
He did not dive. He drove all the way back to Stockton. Police still haven't recovered that body. And since then, Heredia's still been traveling around the region helping families, though, although now he makes sure to get permission from authorities before diving. So he's kind of changed his policy there.
Maybe before making that long drive. Too.
Right, exactly.
Well, thank you, Justin. Roman, tell us, natural gas rates for many customers in Southwest Oregon are going up. From your reporting, what's happening there?
Yeah, we're talking about Avista here, which is a company that delivers natural gas in some parts of Oregon, including the Rogue Valley, Roseburg, Klamath Falls, and LeGrand. They had asked the State Public Utility Commission basically for permission to increase their utility rates. They asked for this rate increase all the way back in November, but then some green energy and these consumer advocacy groups stepped in to fight this rate increase. This happens a lot with rate increases for utilities. And so it's kind of plays out like a lawsuit. There's like judges and rulings and motions, but it's not in a regular court. It's in this like utility rate increase court thing. And so eventually, there was a settlement.
Is that a technical term, Roman?
Yes, utility rate increase court thing, yeah. So there was a settlement between Avista, these advocacy groups, and the Public Utility Commission that was finally reached and agreed to. And now, so these rate increases that they agreed to will go into effect on Monday.
Well, what did Avista initially ask for? How much?
I mean, they initially asked for a lot more money than what they're going to get in this settlement. They were seeking an average of about a 7% increase in customers' bills. So for someone who has a single-family home who uses natural gas, on average, they'd pay about $5 more a month. And that would raise around $7.8 million for Avista.
So what did they want that rate?
Yeah, they gave a couple reasons for wanting that much money. They said the primary need was for more investments in their gas distribution, needing to pay for upgrades, replacing stuff. There was a lot of concern about the company's credit rating. It sounds like one of the credit rating agencies is at risk of downgrading their credit, which would make it really hard for a utility, which requires a lot of credit to expand their capacity and stuff. Inflation is also increasing costs for them. And plus, they also want to make sure that Avista is producing enough profit for investors to keep people investing in the company. They are a for-profit company. So, a lot of what Avista was proposing to was objected to by these advocacy groups, which is why we had all of this fight that led to this settlement.
So you reported negotiations took months. What was the final outcome? What did Avista agree to?
Yeah, it was a big decrease to their initial ask, about a 50% reduction in what Avista was originally asking for. So for customers, that means they're going to see a large reduction in what their rates could have been under the original ask. So for these single-family homes, again, your average bill will only increase by about $1.40 a month rather than $5. And people living in apartments or condos, their bills will actually decrease slightly. they went from an average 6.6% increase across the board to just 2%. So there's lots of other things Avista agreed to. I think one thing that's really interesting is this pilot program for voluntary electrification. There are these old plastic pipes that were made in the 70s by DuPont, and since 2000 they've kind of been failing because of these premature cracking and causing explosions.
Explosions?
Yeah, according to San Francisco Gate, failures from these pipes and other plastic piping has caused 50 deaths from explosions
Wow.
since 1971. There was one 2 years ago at a chocolate factory in Pennsylvania that killed 7 people.
Yeah,
so
I
there's
remember
obviously
that.
a lot of concern to replace these pipes, and Avista's been doing that, but it's really expensive. So they agreed to this pilot where they're going to look at, is it cheaper just to convince these houses to electrify their houses and stop using natural gas and then just cap the pipes and stop using them anymore rather than ripping up the roads needed to do all of that replacement. So the Oregon Citizens Utility Board says this is the first time in Oregon that a natural gas company has funded an electrification program to get people away from natural gas. So that pilot they'll have a plan for it next year, and then it will start in 2027.
Okay. Well, is there anything in the agreement that you didn't include in this story?
Yeah, there's a lot of other cost-cutting things that Avista agreed to, including significantly reducing the profit margins for their investors. They're not going to pay any membership payments to these natural gas lobbying groups, another $400,000 in just cuts across the board. I think one thing that's really interesting, and it's something that Avista has tried before, is they agreed to not make customers pay around $81,000 for legal costs that Avista is paying right now to fight climate change legislation in Oregon. They've been trying to get customers in Oregon to pay for these lawsuits, but these green energy advocates have stepped in and said, no, you can't get customers to pay for that. You're going to have to pay for that yourself. So these consumer advocates say that this settlement is really a win for customers because it doesn't increase the rates as much.
Okay. Well, thanks for your reporting, Roman. Jane, you wrote a story this week about school districts in Oregon banning cell phones during class. Why are they doing that?
Because they have to, basically.
That's a great reason.
Yep. Oregon Governor Tina Kotek signed an executive order earlier this year. School districts in Oregon have to have a cell phone ban plan in place by the end of October, and it has to be up and running by January 1st. I talked to 4 school districts. Most of the ones I talked to are just starting off the school year with a new ban in place rather than waiting until January and switching that policy mid-year.
Well, how will these cell phone bans actually work?
So basically, you have to prohibit students from using cell phones during the entire school day, what they call bell to bell. Some schools have already implemented stricter policies in recent years about, there's been a lot of discussion about restricting cell phone use in schools. So some of them don't have to make huge changes, but it will be a change for sure. The biggest impacts will probably be on high schoolers who now won't be able to use their phones during meals or in between classes anymore. Most of the districts I talked to, the plan is for phones can be in your backpack or in your locker, but they have to be off and away. So that's sort of the plan for that. And then the school districts are still kind of figuring out the enforcement piece a little bit. What do you do if a kid is caught with their phone? So maybe they take the phone away for the remainder of the class period or for the rest of the day, or maybe require the parents to come pick it up at the front office, or maybe there's a meeting with the parents. So the enforcement part is still being figured out, but all the districts said they're really trying to focus on personal responsibility for the kids rather than punishing them.
And what do they expect the impacts of the policy to be?
We'll see, sort of to be determined. The goal or the hope of this policy is to support students' mental health, help them stay more engaged and focused in class. Superintendents hope it will help them form stronger relationships with their peers because they won't just be on their phone. I didn't hear much pushback from the superintendents that I talked to. They said they haven't heard much pushback either from their communities. There are some parents that were worried about being able to get in touch with their kid in the case of an emergency, but they were reassured that, like I said, the kid can have their phone in their backpack, in their locker. It's still somewhat accessible in the case of an absolute emergency. None of the districts that I talked to are using those pouches to lock up phones. But one of the interesting unintended possible consequences is regarding free lunches. So like Phoenix Talent School District has free breakfast and lunch, and their superintendent is concerned that high school students might leave campus during lunch so they can use their phone and then not eat. And the Brookings Harbor superintendent agreed. She said, I think they'll pick the cell phone over the food. So Brookings Harbor High School is going to reinstate a policy allowing students to leave campus for lunch so they can avoid power struggles with kids during lunch. And they're also going to offer to-go boxes for lunch. So then the kids can get their free lunch, take the to-go box, and then still leave campus if they want to use their phone. So we'll have to follow along and see how that part plays out.
Okay, thanks, Jane. And Justin, really quickly, we got charges in the abandoned zoo case we've been following. Just tell us how many and where to find that story.
Yep, Brian Tenney was indicted on 371 counts. And if you want to hear or read more about that, yeah, just go to our website. We've been covering this drama for quite a while.
Okay, well, that's it for the debrief this week. Thanks for listening. You can reach the newsroom with comments on our coverage and suggestions for things we should cover in the future through our news tip line. That's on our website at ijpr.org. And you can find this program and more at jeffexchange.org or on your favorite podcast platform.